Neil James, welcome to ABC News 24. If I can go first to the Kirkham Inquiry, what we've seen released, because we don't have the whole inquiry, in the end, the Commandant of ADFA, Commodore Bruce Kafer, is being reinstated. Is that a good outcome?
Well, it's certainly a good outcome. The Kirkham Inquiry, as everyone suspected, has fully exonerated him. The only sad aspect of it is the Minister still refuses to apologise.
Do you think, though, that the Minister needs to apologise? He says he stands by his statement that he did believe it was an error of judgment to call into question the character of a potential innocent victim of an alleged serious sexual abuse.
Yeah, well, this is a bit of a straw man statement by the Minister, because that's not what Commodore Kafer was accused of doing at the time, or indeed what Commodore Kafer did or could be logically accused of doing. The Minister's trying to squeeze out of the fact that he's pilloried this bloke, scapegoated him for nearly 12 months and now refuses to apologise.
But the Kirkham Inquiry did find that it was that Commodore Kafer should have talked to the female cadet involved or her defence counsel about whether the disciplinary actions should be proceeded with.
Yeah, this is the one thing about the Kirkham Inquiry that worries me a little bit, because that's not my understanding of how it happened at the time, and we're remarkably well informed on this issue. So I think I'd want to see exactly what the Kirkham Inquiry says with this regard before I comment any further, because there's only been select elements of the report announced, not the whole report. And there's lots of questions that haven't been released. For example, did the Kirkham Inquiry recommend Commodore Kafer be reinstated long before today? And if so, why didn't that occur?
In the sense, the Minister says he received the report in December, but there were lots of conversations to be had with both the Chief of the Defence Force and the Secretary of the Department about whether the report could be released, whether a redacted version could be released, and whether Commodore Kafer could be reinstated.
Yeah, look, we fully understand it. And in fact, when the Minister got the report on the 12th of December, we were pestered with questions about whether it should be released straight away. And we said, well, obviously, there'll be a lot of decisions that have to be made about its release. It still has taken far too long to be released, particularly when a man's character is at stake and he's been defamed so extensively nationally.
If we could go to the broader issue of Defence Force culture, the Defence Force now has a plan, what's called the Pathway to Change on Defence Force Culture, which sets out what seems to be a plan that will take at least 5 years to implement, to strengthen not only the values in the Defence Force, but also to improve the way any breaches of those values are dealt with. Is that an acceptable outcome from the suite of inquiries that have been had?
Look, we've said all along that most of the inquiries weren't unnecessary, like a lot of the other public critics said. As the National Public Interest Guardian for defence matters, we thought a lot of good would come out of them, and a lot of good has come out of them. There is one simple point people need to remember. Every single independent inquiry into Defence Force misbehaviour has concluded that such misbehaviour is not systemic and not caused by a deep-seated or endemic so-called perverted culture. And indeed, these latest inquiries pretty much back up that. There are lots of things that need fixing, but they're not deep-seated major faults.
But the Chief of the Defence Force did say these can't be treated, breaches can't be treated simply as a few bad apples amongst a very good lot. They have the potential to damage the reputation and very high standing of the Defence Force, don't they? And in the end,
no doubt
is it a question of them being dealt with properly when they arise?
Well, the problem basically is it's such a huge organisation, and a lot of the allegations that came out in the DLA Piper inquiry, are over a 50-year period. We don't know how many of them are actually justified. We don't know how many of them involved criminal offences. But as the Defence Association said, every time there's been Defence Force abuses on social media, they're unacceptable, and they need to be stamped out. The difficulty is stamping them out, because unfortunately the Defence Force is disproportionately made up of young Australians, and young Australians often do stupid things. Now, the Chief of Defence Force made the point that the nation quite rightly holds the Defence Force to a higher standard. There's a difference between a high standard and an impossible standard, and I think a lot of the Defence Force's critics really set an impossible standard that we don't think can ever be reached.